our Adidas landing page is now feature complete and looking fantastic. But before we deploy, we need to clean up some of the imports that our components is not actually using it. So for example, we need to clean this use texture hook. And then we need to do this for every single one of this component. So instead of finding and searching for that, I'm just going to open up the terminal and then I'm going to run npm run build. And by doing so, you're going to get some errors that are going to tell you what files are needed to be cleaned. As you can see, we have so much error here. The first error is we need to clean the shirts log page.tsx. So it is saying that the function page must be uppercase, not to be lowercase. So let's fix that. All right, let's head to this page.tsx and then let's rename this page to page. I'll just make the first letter uppercase. All right, first step is complete. So the next step is the cube one. So let's remove the text and then import React one. Okay, this one is complete. And after that, we need to head to the first sport model.tsx, and it is saying that mask and use 3 is never used. So let's clean that up. All right. And then after that, we need to head to the MainStudioModel.tsx, and it is saying that our shirts need to be included inside use effect. You can actually click on the warning by pressing the Ctrl plus click. It will navigate you to that specific line. So it is saying that we need to add the shirts right over here. So by doing so, we need to put our shirts array inside a use memo hook. If we don't, React would rebuild a brand new array every single time the components re-renders. That means even if nothing actually changed, React would still think it's a different array. And because we are using shirts inside use effect hook, that would cause the effect to run on every render, which means my router.prefetch would keep running unnecessarily. So by using useMemoHook, I'm telling React only rebuild this array when its dependencies change. In this case, nodes or mats. That way the array reference stays stable between renders. And my effect runs only when it should. And the code is more efficient. So let's do that. So here, let's say use memohook from React. And then for the return, I'm going to return this array. Here we go. And then let's add for the second parameter by saying change this based on the nodes or mats. There we go. Beautiful. All right, now let's continue on cleaning up. So after that, let's head to the another one, so which is the test.tsx, and then let's remove the environment. Perfect. And then view canvas or view control. Okay. Perfect. And then patch a preloading manager. So this is actually using the any property here, which in TypeScript not allowed. So I'm going to copy and paste this into a ChatGPT so that it provides me with types. All right, here we go. Simple enough. All right, let's open up again. And then, okay, now finally for the use texture hook, let's click on it. It is saying that we need to add the path right over here. So since our path is actually using the shirt type, why not put the path right over here instead of the shirt type? Perfect. So now let's build it again. All right, now perfect. Everything is validated and our project is ready for deployment. All right, now let's refresh the page. The minor issue that we have is that once we are in loading state, you can see that the HTML elements is visible. So we don't want this. So the fix is actually pretty simple. We just need to add this loading skeleton, a div with PG black. So let's do that. So let's open up the Explorer and let's head to the loading skeleton.tsx. And then in here, we need to wrap this div inside a div. So let's say div. I'm going to duplicate this div. All right. And then this div have a class name of bg-red-500. Just for the moment, for debugging purpose, I'm going to make the background red so that we can see its background. And then we're going to say double-screen and h-screen in order to take the full height of the screen. Let's refresh it. All right. As you can see, the positioning is a little bit off. I misspelled the screen here. So screen N. Okay. So let's refresh it again. It is in wrong position, so let's fix that. So I'm going to make this div a flex. Now let's say items dash center and justify dash center. Let's refresh it again. Perfect. All right. Now let's change the background to bg-black. There we go. All right. Perfect. After that, let's talk about another concept, which is called preloading textures and files. So if I open up the dev tool here, and on the network tab, let's refresh the page. You can see that we are only just requesting the textures and files for main studio model. As you can see, we have default studio, red studio, and the color of the shirts right over here as a texture. So if I click on the sports shirt, for example, you can see that another request is actually sending in order to get the textures and models. And this will create those macro loading delays that breaks the seamless experience we are aiming for. So what's happening right now? We are loading assets reactively rather than proactively. So what is the solution? We need to ensure all the assets load at once during the initial page load in order to reduce a little bit of load timing. So in order to fix this, let's open up the dev tool, start a component folder, let's create a new file. And in here, I'm going to call it assets preload.tsx. And then in here, I'm going to run refce. All right. And after that, I'm going to remove the import, and let's actually remove the return and its div. Now within this body, we are going to preload our 3D models. You have already seen this preload if you paid attention to our models that we have created. For example, if I navigate to the MainStudioModel.tsx, you can see that it is already using the useGLTF preload. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to collect all of these preloads and then bring it into one file. So let's do that. Let's import the useGLTF. There we go. And let's do it for first white model here. Copy this and move it right over here. And then we need to do this for all of the models. Now, after preloading our 3D models, we need to preload our textures as well. So first, we need to iterate through our main model textures. So what kind of models? If you open up the Explorer and head to the textures.ts, we need to iterate through this studio textures. And then we're going to get access to this main in order to get this path. So let's do that. So in order to iterate through the object, we got to say object.values. We're going to extract object's values by saying studio textures.main dot for each. And then we're going to take each and every single path. And then in here, we're going to say if type of path is triple equals to string, we're going to say use textures from React 3 Drei dot preload. And then we're going to take that path. There we go. And once the main one is done, we need to get the textures for all of these shirts. So if I head to the textures.ts, we need to iterate through each and every single path. So let's do that. So right below this, I'm going to say object.keys. Let's say studio textures.shirts, white, gray, and sport. And then we're going to cast that as a shirt type. And then we're going to say dot for each. We're going to say take each and every single shirt type here. And then after that, we're going to say const shirt section is equals to studio texture dot shirts based on this shirt type. So right now we extracted the first, second, and third. Because as you can see, each shirts, white, gray, and sports has multiple sections, which is first, second, and third with their own textures. Now, once we have all of the sections, we need to iterate through each and every single section. So right below this shared section, object.values, and I'm going to say shared section dot for each, and then we have a single section here. And then in here we have section with type of any. So we need to cast this section into an object because it is an object. So in here, we're going to say if type of section was triple equal to an object and section wasn't empty, we're going to iterate through each and every single section. Object dot values sections dot for each, and then since each section has its own texture, we're going to take each and every single texture path. And within the curly brace, we're going to say if type of texture path triple equals to a string, we're going to use textures from React 3 Drei dot preload texture path. Simple enough. Now by doing so, we are preloading all of the textures. Now the final thing that is actually left is our cube map. We need to iterate through this environment map in order to take those studio textures. So let's do that. So right below this object.key, I'm going to create a const cube size is equals to these files. And then we are ready to iterate through the environment path. So let's say object.key environment path, all right, as shared type again. If I head to the texture.ts environment path that contains white, gray, sports. All right, so you can cast it as shared type. All right, by doing so, we're going to use for each to get access each and every single path. Dot for each shared type. And then we're going to set the body here. And within the body, we're going to say cube sides dot for each. We're going to take each and every single sides. And then within it, we're going to say use texture dot preload. We're going to preload it again. And then let's use string manipulation, $sign, and then we're going to get that environment path with that specific shared type, $sign, site. So this will create a complete path. There we go. Now after that, let's add this into our view canvas. So let's open up the Explorer and let's head to the view canvas.tsx. And then in here, we're going to add that assets preload that we have created. All right, now let's import it. Okay, it is already imported, but anyway, it is saying that our component is returning void. So let's fix that. So in here, I'm going to say return null. There we go. So let's refresh this page. Now let's open up the dev tool. Now you can see that not only our main studio texture has been loaded, the other shared types textures is loaded as well. You can see that we have sport textures here, gray textures here, and white textures here. Beautiful. And by navigating to other pages, it would take less time. Since we are in the development environment, you can see no differences. But in production environment, it's gonna bring a faster load time. All right, now we have done with the preloading and prefetching. All right, the final touch that we need to make to our project, just like an icing on the top of the cake, is to add an initial animation. So let's go ahead and create that. So first thing first, we need to head to the MainStudioModel.tsx. So let's open up the Explorer and navigate to the MainStudioModel.tsx. All right. Now in here, right above this use GSAP, I'm going to create another GSAP animation. So let's say use GSAP. And then within it, we need to target this entire group, this group. So let's give this group a ref. So right at the top, let's first create a ref. Right above this mesh refs, I'm going to create a const group ref equals to use ref. And the type is 3.group. For initial value, I'm going to set it to null. Now I'm just going to go ahead and copy this group ref and apply it to this group. So let's say ref is equals to group ref. All right, now let's target this ref into our GSAP animation. So within the curly brace, I'm going to say if group ref dot current wasn't available, we're going to return this. Otherwise, GSAP dot from group ref dot current dot position. We're going to bring the entire group closer to the camera. We are not actually moving the camera. We are actually playing with the position of 3D models. So let's actually bring it closer by saying Z2, and then let's set the duration to 4 with ease of power 4.in/out. All right, now let's refresh the page. Let's actually bring the model a little bit down in order to center the logo. So let's say Y minus 0.15. Let's add the comma at the end. All right, let's refresh it. Perfect. Now what I'm going to do next is I'm going to spread these models away from this center one. Add a little bit distance between these two. So let's do that. We need to target these meshes. So let's say mesh refs dot current dot for each. And then we're going to say shared with the current index. And then within it, we're going to say if that shared wasn't available, then return it. Otherwise, I'm going to say gsap.from. I'm going to target the shared.position, and then let's say x shared.position.x. We are actually getting the current position of our shirts, and then we're going to multiply it by 2. And then let's set the delay to 1 second with duration of 3 seconds with ease of power 2.out. Okay, let's test this out. Okay, let's actually change the rotation as well. So right below this gsap.from, I'm going to create another one by saying gsap.from. And then this time we're going to target the shared.rotation. And then we're going to say y-axis, change the y-axis of our shirts by saying shared.rotation.y. We're going to get the current rotation of y-axis and then multiply it by 4. And then we're going to set the delay to 1 with duration of, again, 3. And then with ease of power 2.out. Perfect. Now let's refresh it. Perfect. All right, now I'm going to refresh this again. Beautiful. Now what I'm going to do next is, if I navigate to other pages, for example, and then turn back again, you're going to see the animation again. So we don't want this. We just want this animation only run just for one time. In order to make that happen, we need to create a session. So let's create that. Within this use GSAP hook that we have created, right above this if clause, we're going to say const has animation run. We're going to say session storage dot get item. We're going to give it a name. For example, I'm going to call it MainStudio animation ran. I misspelled the main here. Main. Here we go. So once we get the session, we're going to check that if that session is already exists, we don't need to run this animation anymore. And if the animation didn't run, we're going to set it right over here by saying onComplete. Just call a callback function. And then within it, we're going to say session storage dot set item. We're going to set that item here by saying main. I'm going to copy this, paste that over here, and then we're going to set it to true. Here we go. All right. If I head to the application, you can see that the main studio animation ran is true already. So if I remove this and I refresh it again, you're going to see everything is working perfectly. And if I open up the dev tool, you're going to see that the session has been created. We have just built a complete production-ready 3D landing page that could genuinely win awards. If you enjoyed this journey and learned something new, I would be incredibly grateful if you could smash that like button and subscribe to the channel. It truly helps support creating more content like this. I'm curious, what part of this build did you find most valuable? Let me know in the comments, what would you like to see next? Thank you so much for coding along with me. Keep building amazing things, and I'll see you in the next tutorial.